basically imbue your reading life with all of the essential skills, the tools that you need to be a scholar, not just to be a casual reader, but to be a scholar with acumen and expertise, and to practice this healthy and wholesome and rigorous approach to reading all through your life. That's only a good thing. My name is Bren. It's good to see you. There's been a lot of discourse lately around the function of the university, the failing of the university, and more specifically around the failings of and the disintegration of the humanities. This video is for anyone who feels despondent when they see all of these indictments of the current state of the universities, and they might be lovers of literature or of the arts in general and have a desire to pursue an intensive exploration of these fields. You don't need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to some liberal arts college that is going to put you massively in debt and give you a minuscule chance of finding a job in academia one day. I hope that this video gives you some encouragement to see an alternative path to follow your love of letters. Basically what it is, as it says in the title, these are 10 books that will equip you if you study them rigorously enough and approach them the right way. These 10 books will equip you with everything that a bachelor's degree in English literature can offer. We can't, I think, function healthily as a culture, as a society, without artists, philosophers, historians, cultural researchers, poets, musicians. This is so incredibly important. It's very easy and lazy, I think, to dismiss those practices as secondary or, lacking in urgency when, there's so much calamity in the world. But, what does a dying man ask for on his deathbed? He doesn't ask for the latest statistics from the Wall Street Journal or the price of stocks. He asks for his favorite records to be played, or his favorite poem from childhood to be read aloud, or to watch films that console and comfort him in the dwindling light of his existence on this earth. So that human side of the humanities is so vital. As Italo Calvino superbly put it, art offers us tiny, luminous traces that counterpoint the dark catastrophe of life. Alright, so that was my little soapbox rant. I hope that this video gives you some encouragement to see an alternative path. If you don't have a trust fund or a scholarship to carry you through the labyrinthine windings of a humanities program to get a PhD, then don't be disheartened, because this is all you need to really cultivate your love of literature, to expand your thinking and your horizons, to travel deeper into the rich deposits, the rich mineral deposits of our literary heritage. The first book that you need is How to Read a Book, Mortimer J. Adler and Charles Van Doren. This is a classic handbook, a guide to really learning to read literature, to read books. There's something very elemental about this. I don't want to say elementary because that has a pejorative tone to it. It is without bells and whistles, without frills. There is no posturing or showiness in this classic text, this handbook to reading. It is really systematic and methodical. They go through these 4 levels of reading, starting from the most basic ABCs, stringing together sentences, all the way up to the 4th level, which they rather clunkily term, in my opinion, syntopical reading, which is basically the ability to cohere a range of opinions or arguments or perspectives or researches on a particular subject, and to draw parallels from those various aspects or perspectives on a particular subject. So to give you an example, let's talk about Shakespeare. So not only in syntopical reading would you read the primary materials of Shakespeare's plays and his sonnets, but you would then read Shakespeare criticism, both classic historical Shakespeare criticism and contemporary discourse on Shakespeare. Obviously you can't read it all, but as much as possible. And then you will synthesize your readings, you will draw out parallels, you will draw out motifs and arguments or concepts that build upon what has come before them, their antecedents, and in that way you will be able to generate your own perspective, your own argumentation, or your own thesis on Shakespeare or on a particular aspect of Shakespeare. So that is like the most complex and advanced level of reading, but it covers everything else as well. So this is really the place to start, and you can find this book for, a few dollars or euros or pounds, whatever, secondhand. You can probably get it new for $10 or $15. Then the next one is of a similar ilk. This is Beginning Theory by Peter Barry. And this is very key for someone who has the idea of a kind of replacement crash course in literary studies, because anyone can, and I think should, read the great works of literature that we have in our world, heritages of the literary tradition. But if you want to practice scholarly reading and you want to become a scholar, but in order to do that, you need to understand literary theory. It's a big bogey term, but this is the perfect book to dispel your qualms, to dispel the nonsensical myths about what theory is, even the spookiest of terms like, post-structuralism, or dare I say, postmodern theory. All of that is laid out lucidly, coherently, succinctly in this excellent and very enjoyable book. It's not just that Peter Barry lists off, here is feminism, here is structuralism, here is post-structuralism, here is post-colonial theory, which some books on sort of an overview or an introduction to theory don't really explain where this stuff emerges from, but Peter Barry does a very good job, because he talks about the history of English studies. That is this watershed, if gradual, transitioning from literary studies as the domain of a small group of monks locked away in their monasteries, protecting ancient scripts or whatever, how literary studies went from that domain of monasteries into a professionalization and a rigorous institutional development as functioning components of the modern and the contemporary universities. So that's a very key understanding in terms of the foundations of literary theory, which then gives you that basis upon which to build all of the other isms that came after that initial sort of liberal humanist approach to English studies. And then he even goes as far as theory after theory and talks about some of the problems within the university, and it's just very good stuff. So if you have this one, you can read any book. If you have this one, you can understand any theoretical lens with which to approach a scholarly reading of a particular text. And then the next 8 I can show you in one bundle. Hopefully I've been doing enough bicep curls because it is a massive stack. But this is the Norton Anthology of English literature in 8 volumes. This is the 10th edition. You don't need the latest edition. They make minor changes, editorial changes, and changes in terms of the anthology or the arranging of these texts. But for the most part, it is pretty stock standard. But they're excellent resources. There's an 11th edition by now. I don't know. But this is it looks like I've got a mixture of the 9th and the 10th editions. Earlier editions are just fine, and you can find this stuff surprisingly cheap secondhand. It goes from the Middle Ages, 16th century, early 17th century, Restoration in the 18th century. The American literature is in 2 volumes, beginnings to 1865 and 1865 to the present. In the 9th edition, it looks like I've got here, and then the 10th edition continues with the Romantic period, Victorian age, 20th and 21st centuries. And it's not just key texts or excerpts of text, but it is also context, criticism, introductory material. It's really an absolute cornucopia, a rich repository of all of the supporting material that you need to foster a strong backbone of literary practice. That is a whole English degree in 8 volumes. It's not hyperbole. it's really the foundation that you need to develop your own literary degree, at least on the undergraduate level. But I do have a couple of extra bonuses here that I just want to throw in, sort of more specifically for different kinds of practice. So, you know, not everyone has a scholarly disposition or temperament. I'm not somebody with a scholarly sensibility. I can do it. I went to university, I obtained 2 degrees, I started on postgraduate studies, but it's not my natural sensibility. I'm much more freewheeling and associative and spontaneous in the way that my imagination works, which is perhaps unsurprising considering that my primary literary form is poetry. But there's a freedom in generating and developing your own self-study, and you don't have to follow that dry sort of path of scholarship. You're not under pressure to produce 4 or 5 academic articles a year. That is a beautiful freedom. It's a lifelong journey, and you can do it on your own terms. So I just got a few bonus things here, bonus resources. So if you're interested in poetry, there are loads and loads of fantastic books that serve as mini workshops to help you to hone your craft in verse. This is just one among many. I've got The Art of Voice by Tony Hoagland, Poetic Principles and Practice. Tony Hoagland was a massively underrated American poet who died a couple of years ago. He has, I think, 11 books in total. About 7 or 8 of them are books of poems, and about 3 of them are just these wonderful poetic resources, books of craft and criticism that enable you to develop your own practice and push your own limits and extend and add a suppleness to your writing. And this is a very good one. So I just wanted to mention that if you're interested in poetry specifically, there are chapters here on voice as speech register, imported voices, the vernacular, sound of intimacy, authority, and then prompts, exercises, and skill building. Fantastic stuff. If you're looking for more of a friend or personal, intimate guide, but also with practical assignments on how to develop your prose writing, I would recommend Anne Lamont. This is Bird by Bird, some instructions on writing and life. Very, very good stuff, again, with plenty of prompting to actually practice the craft of writing. Then I have another one here, the Bloomsbury Introduction to Creative Writing. Again, it's got just excellent resources contained within it, as well as directing you towards other resources. This one is by Tara Mokhtari. And I've got How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster, another classic in this genre. Yeah, again, this just helps you to read in the way that you would be paying a lot of money to be taught to read if you were attending a humanities program at university. Yeah, it's very good. Then something that I always advocate, and I think is just for me the acme of the apotheosis of excellent guidance in terms of the literary tradition, in terms of writing, and that is writers writing about writers, or writers writing about writing, or writers writing about reading. That sounds like a bit of tongue twister. What I mean is that, of course, anyone who writes a book is a writer. So, you know, you have these guidebooks, these textbooks, but I mean a supremely gifted, idiosyncratic master of prose or poetry writing about their own development and their own practice, whether that is through essays of criticism or memoir. So I've got J.M. Coetzee, late essays. J.M. Coetzee, whether you love him or hate him, is an extraordinary prose stylist and thinker. And this is a book of his criticism. This is him reading the great works of literature and writing about them. And this is him going really, really deep in his thinking and his analysis of what works and why it works and what doesn't work in these great writers. So it's an extraordinary resource to elevate your own encounter with the great works of literature. Then this is something, again, a bit more personal, but very, very solid stuff. And that is something I've talked about on the channel before, Stephen King on writing. first half of this book is a memoir of his own journey to becoming the most, to Stephen King with a capital S and a capital K, the most commercially successful writer on earth. And the second part is sort of building blocks of good storytelling, prose storytelling. So that's something that might interest you as well. And I think we'll just leave it there, actually. Yeah, let me know what you think about this. Have you been to university yourself? Did you study a degree within the humanities? How do you feel about the erosion of the humanities? What does that say about the values, the dominant values in our culture today? One thing I just want to say before we end off is that these 10 books and the sort of bonus ones that I've recommended here, but these 10 books can serve as a very sturdy foundation upon which to build. It's not that you will read these 10 volumes and then just stop there. Of course, they will equip you to seek out other materials and other resources. But I can also just say right here, right now, up front, that the internet, even YouTube itself, is a massive, massive ocean of fantastic, phenomenal, free, easily accessible resources. There are lectures, whole lectures by brilliant professors on the great works of literature online on YouTube. I will add a few links into the description of this video to help you find resources. And then there are also YouTubers providing spaces in which to gather into communities and hold one another accountable in the practice of exploring and analyzing these great works and learning to think and by standing on the shoulders of giants. This is not me pumping a Patreon because I don't have a Patreon, although perhaps I will make one in the future. But Dr. Adam Walker is one who has his own outlet of incredible resources. So I will leave a link to his channel. Like I said, there are many others as well. I contributed to an online course in French literature created by my friend Maria from the YouTube channel Strange Lucidity. So I will leave a link to her channel as well. That course is behind a paywall, but it certainly is a lot more affordable and accessible than going to take a course in French literature at a university. There are tons of other resources, so I will leave some links as well. And yeah, let me know what you think about this issue. What have I left out? What questions need to be raised on this subject? And yeah, just otherwise, if you don't have anything to say in that regard, please feel free to just say hello down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you all soon.